Does subliminal messaging work? Strap in, because this one's interesting. So once upon a time, a guy named James Vickery, who's considered the father of subliminal advertising, made the claim that he increased sales of Coke and popcorn through subliminal messaging. Problem is, try as they might, nobody was able to replicate his findings, and essentially, we figured out that it was all a publicity hoax. Nonetheless, this fascinating topic led to a bunch of studies, but then, in 1996, a meta-analysis essentially ripped through those studies and determined that the experimental parameters were crap, the sample sizes were too small, and the results were insignificant. So at this point, we can toss subliminal messaging out the window. Except that, in 2006, two very well put together experiments showed some very interesting conclusions. In these experiments, it showed that essentially if a brand is associated with the achievement of a goal, people who are in pursuit of achieving that goal can be primed to choose that brand. So in one experiment, they took a bunch of people who said they were thirsty and a bunch of people who said they weren't thirsty, and they subliminally primed them with either the word Lipton tea or a nonsensical word, and then asked them afterwards whether or not they intended to drink certain brands to quench that thirst. And the people who were thirsty and primed with Lipton tea chose Lipton tea at a significantly higher rate. Another experiment done had the same initial experimental parameters, but at the end, rather than asking about intent, simply allowed the participant to choose between mineral water or Lipton tea, and an even significantly higher number of people chose Lipton tea. In both instances, compared to people who weren't thirsty, there was no significance to the choices of brands that they picked. What's interesting is that these studies back up what we already know in behavioral economics. In the Lipton iced tea experiment, it shows the impact of availability. By priming individuals with the brand name Lipton tea, it was making it subconsciously more available, and availability is usually misattributed in the mind as fondness. So it was triggering that misattribution. People were thinking that they were more fond of Lipton tea, and that's the reason why when they went in pursuit of quenching their thirst, Lipton tea won. And that other experiment where they had a choice between water and the Lipton tea, that demonstrates the paradox of choice. In an instance with limited choice options, the people who were primed with Lipton tea chose Lipton tea more often. Anyway, fascinating stuff.